37 years of assumptions. That's how long the scientific community looked at Uranus and saw what it expected: a pale, featureless sphere drifting quietly at the solar system's outer edge, holding no secrets worth pursuing. Of all the planets astronomers could study, this was the one that had effectively been crossed off the list. Researchers joked about it. When major space missions were ranked, there was always somewhere more interesting to point the telescope. Then, the James Webb Space Telescope turned its infrared instruments toward it, and what came back was unrecognizable: a world with structure, motion, weather that had been raging the whole time we weren't watching. That serene blue-green appearance had been a disguise. What it had been concealing underneath was one of the most extreme, violent, and genuinely frightening environments in the entire solar system. And for 37 years, we had been laughing at it. The last time any human-built machine came within useful range of Uranus was January 24th, 1986. Voyager 2 made its closest approach. Sweeping within roughly 50,000 miles of the cloud tops, a single pass, no second attempt, no orbit, no lingering. The spacecraft was moving fast and doing what it was designed to do, and the photographs it returned showed almost nothing. A smooth blue-green sphere with no visible features. No bands, no storms, no texture, no drama. Every other planet in the outer solar system had delivered spectacle. Jupiter's continent-sized storms, Saturn's rings, Neptune's dark hurricane the size of Earth, and Uranus offered a blank. That single flyby portrait became the definitive story of the planet for an entire generation. Almost no one asked whether the portrait was complete. The story of Uranus begins 200 years earlier. On a night in 1781, in a garden in Bath, England, a German-born musician named William Herschel was scanning the sky with a homemade telescope, one of the finest instruments of his era, built and polished with his own hands, when he caught something that didn't behave the way stars do. Stars remain points of light regardless of magnification. Whatever Herschel was looking at grew into a small disk when he increased the power. Over subsequent nights, he tracked it moving against the fixed background of stars. He initially reported it as a comet. He was wrong. It was a planet, the seventh planet from the Sun, the first world in human history to be discovered with a telescope rather than the naked eye. Every planet known before that night had been visible to ancient peoples without instruments, seen by anyone willing to look up. Uranus was the first one that required us to seek it out. It has been reluctant to reveal anything about itself ever since. Before the storms, the smell, the diamonds, and yes, there are diamonds. You need to understand the single fact that defines everything about this planet. Uranus is lying on its side. Every planet in the solar system has an axial tilt. Earth's is roughly 23 degrees, which is why we have seasons. Uranus is tilted nearly 98 degrees. It doesn't spin upright the way most planets do. It rolls, like a wheel moving along the ground, rather than a gyroscope spinning in place. This planet was not completely horizontal at some point in its ancient past, almost certainly by a collision with something of enormous mass. And in 4.5 billion years, it has never righted itself. That single ancient violence determines almost everything else about this world. Because a planet rolling on its side experiences something no other planet does. Its poles don't point outward to the sides. They point toward the sun, one at a time, in sequence. Uranus takes 84 Earth years to complete one orbit. Lying on its side the way it is, each pole spends roughly 21 years aimed almost directly at the sun, and 21 years pointed away into the cold dark. During the sun-facing phase, there is no sunrise and no sunset. Just a dim, distant sun circling low across the sky in slow, endless spirals, never dropping below the horizon for 2 solid decades. And on the opposite pole, simultaneously, 21 years of unbroken, absolute darkness. No morning, no light, a winter with no end. If you were born on the wrong hemisphere at the wrong time on Uranus, you could live a complete human life. Grow up, grow old, and die, without ever once seeing the sun rise. Not that the sun would offer much comfort even when visible. Uranus sits approximately 1.8 billion miles from the sun. At that distance, sunlight arrives roughly 370 times weaker than what reaches Earth on a clear afternoon. Noon on Uranus is dimmer than the fading light just after the sun drops below the horizon here. It is a world living in permanent, deep twilight. So, a planet rolling on its side in near darkness, with seasons that outlast human careers. Now the temperature. Uranus is the coldest planet in the solar system. Not the farthest, the coldest. Those are not the same thing. The upper atmosphere reaches minus 371 degrees Fahrenheit. The coldest temperature ever recorded on Earth, Vostok Station, Antarctica, 1983, was minus 128. Uranus is colder by more than 240 degrees. The farther planet, Neptune, runs measurably warmer. The ancient collision that tilted Uranus appears to have suppressed its internal heat. Neptune releases nearly 3 times more energy than it receives from the sun. Uranus barely does. Its internal furnace has been effectively off for billions of years. You would think the cold would be the worst of it. It isn't. In 2018, Patrick Irwin at Oxford identified the upper clouds as rich in hydrogen sulfide, the compound behind the smell of rotting eggs. Before the cold and suffocation finished you, the first thing you'd register would be an overwhelming stench of decay. Then, the James Webb Space Telescope looked. In infrared, the featureless blue dissolved. A bright polar cap appeared at the North Pole. At its center, an enormous active vortex, weather on a planet we had classified as dormant for 40 years. It had been there the whole time. Webb also captured all 13 rings into a single image. Thin, dark, nearly invisible, standing nearly vertical around the planet like a target, and found a new moon, 6 miles across, invisible to every instrument, including Voyager 2. Uranus now has 29 known moons. One hides a nightmare, Miranda's Verona Rupee, the tallest cliff in the solar system, 12 miles straight down. Gravity so weak you would drift for 10 minutes before reaching the bottom. In silence, in darkness. There is no surface. Any craft descending wouldn't crash. It would be swallowed into a superheated ocean of water, ammonia, and methane thousands of miles deep. And deep inside, it rains diamonds, carbon compressed into crystals under extreme pressure, confirmed in a laboratory in 2017. The magnetic field is broken, tilted 59 degrees from the rotation axis, offset from the core, as though the same ancient impact wrenched it from its anchor. When Voyager 2 flew through in 1986, the only spacecraft ever sent, scientists spent years just interpreting the readings. One spacecraft, 40 years ago. Less than a day. all of it hidden in plain sight, painted calm and blue, waiting for the moment we decided to look properly. We did, and it hasn't let go since.